Who here is excited about Bitcoin? Roger's so excited, he's got 2 hands up. Who here is excited about Bitcoin? Yes! If you're here from the Casual Connect, actually, can everybody hold your hands up if you're excited about Bitcoin? Can you keep your hands up for a minute? If you're here from the Casual Connect conference, look to your left and look to your right. Look at the hands that are held up. People are excited about Bitcoin. These are smart people. The reason people are excited about Bitcoin is because it's like, imagine you're in the ocean. You're in the ocean and there are these waves. Bitcoin is like a tidal wave. We're excited about Bitcoin because we're in this wave, and we don't know what's going to happen when this wave crashes. It has the opportunity to change everything. From when I read the news in the morning on the New York Times to when I buy a house, Bitcoin has the opportunity to change every financial transaction. Every time I'm interacting with a company, Bitcoin has the opportunity to change that. And that's why we're excited to be part of this wave. We don't know what's going to happen when it hits, but we know everything is going to change. It's like the internet. It is going to be so big. So, when we have our hands up because we're excited about Bitcoin, why doesn't the whole world have their hands up? Why isn't every person excited about Bitcoin and the opportunity it presents? And the answer is because they don't know about it, or they know about it, but they don't understand it. And we, as the early adopters, are the ambassadors of Bitcoin. So we need to be able to successfully introduce Bitcoin to our friends. You know, as early adopters, we talk about Bitcoin a lot, right? We love it. When I'm on the plane coming out here, I talked to 3 or 4 people, sitting next to me, and I told them I was coming out here for a Bitcoin conference, and I explained to them about Bitcoin. And most of them have never heard of it. So they all ask, and our friends all ask us, what's Bitcoin? There's even a YouTube video, what is Bitcoin? That's the title of the video because everyone wants to know, what is Bitcoin? And it's kind of a trick question because when we get asked, what is Bitcoin, of course we go on to answer what Bitcoin is. We talk about electronic signatures and the blockchain and cryptography and 51% attacks and how it's peer-to-peer. We might talk about the Federal Reserve. We might talk about libertarianism and all of these different things. Now, I've got an iPhone. Just imagine if somebody was trying to sell me an iPhone and they're talking about the spectrum of the radio waves that it uses, or how flash memory works, or any of these things. I'm going to be confused. I don't know what that means when they're talking about radio waves or any of that. And that's how people feel when they ask, what is Bitcoin? And we respond by telling them what Bitcoin is. They don't know. They're thinking that's confusing. It sounds complicated. I have no idea what you're talking about. And on top of that, every time there's a bad news event, there's a Silk Road or a Mt. Gox, they know in the back of their mind, this is dangerous. I can lose everything that I put in there. Why in the world would I want to buy Bitcoins when anybody around the world can then come and steal them from me, or Bitcoin goes bankrupt? Why would I want to be in that? So we need to flip it. We need to think differently. When somebody asks us, what is Bitcoin? We need to think like Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, he didn't talk about the technical specs. He talked about what you could do with it in a way that people could understand. He talked about use cases. So when we introduce Bitcoin to our friends, we need to uncomplicate it for them. One of the keys, they want to know where to get it. We don't want to give them a whole list of things. You know, when I go to the store to buy bread, I see 2 aisles of bread, and it's tough, right? How do I differentiate which bread do I want? And that same thing happens if we introduce Bitcoin to somebody and we say you can get it on local Bitcoins, or you can get it on Coinbase, or you can get it on Mt. Gox. That puts a burden on people. Then they have to go and understand the pros and cons of all these different solutions. And people are lazy, right? They'll say, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, and then they never do it. So we need to simplify it for them. When I tell people how to get Bitcoin, I'm in the US, I just tell them, you go to Coinbase. You know, it's the simplest way. It's safe. I don't want to tell them to go to local Bitcoins, and then they meet up with somebody in a back alley, and they give them their money, and then they lose their money. And plus, if I'm telling my dad about it or my friends, they don't want to do that. They don't want to go and give somebody $100 or $1,000 or $10,000 in an alley. That's kind of crazy. That's not what people expect in the US. So when you are talking to your friends, you need to think, where are they from? You know, are they in Japan or in Singapore or in the Netherlands? And think, what's the easiest way for them to get Bitcoins? What would you do if you were them? And then you just recommend that solution. If they check it out and they don't like it, you know, my aunt, she wanted to buy some Bitcoins. And so she went on Coinbase, and it wasn't a good experience for her. And then we can work through that. We can talk through that. It's not the end of the world. If you recommend one and they don't like it, then you can address their concerns and tell them a different way to get their Bitcoins. So that's the first thing, is uncomplicating Bitcoin. Then we need to think, when we're talking to our friends, what's in it for them? You know, earlier when we were talking about what is Bitcoin, and we're talking about the blockchain or the political aspects, and maybe that's why we are in it. But when I'm talking to somebody and I'm introducing Bitcoin to them, I want to think from their perspective. What is in it for this person? If they're in the US, the number one reason to be in Bitcoin is because you want to speculate on the future value of it. You don't want to buy Bitcoins to go purchase something on Overstock. That's a big hassle. There aren't really great use cases for most people in the US today for using Bitcoin. So when I talk to most people in the US, I talk about the investment aspect of it. Now, there are some other use cases in the US. You know, if you are in a market, if you have a business that's legal, but it's this gray area where the government doesn't like it, like maybe the marijuana industry or the porn industry, and you can't get a bank account, if I'm talking to somebody like that, then instead of talking about the investment aspect of it, I'll talk about, this is a way where you can have banking type functionality. You don't have to have millions of dollars in a safe in Colorado where they have the marijuana there, and they can't have a bank account, so they need to accept cash. They can accept Bitcoin instead, and they don't have to worry about their cash getting stolen or lost or any of that type of thing. You know, Bitcoin is a great use case for that. If they're a business owner and they have overseas employees, and maybe they have a development team in the U.S., or not in the U.S., if they're in the U.S. and they have a development team overseas, you know, Bitcoin can be potentially a great way for them to pay their employees, for their employees to get paid more quickly, more easily, more efficiently. You know, maybe there are some big conversion fees that they don't have to worry about. So that's the key. When you're introducing Bitcoin to your friends, you want to think, what's it like to be that person? What are they interested in? And you know, Bitcoin's this great tool. How can it benefit that person? Because then, if they know what's in it for them, if they know that Bitcoin can provide a retirement or provide a way for them to pay their employees or provide a marketing opportunity, then they get excited about Bitcoin. And then if they know how to buy Bitcoins, because you told them through Coinbase or whatever their local mechanism is, those are the two key things. Having them want it and having them know exactly how to go get it. And when you explain it like that, it changes the conversation. Then instead of being confused, they ask questions that are at a higher level because they know what you're talking about. So they might ask you questions like, where do Bitcoins get value? How are Bitcoins created? Who runs Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin safe? Those types of questions. And then when you answer, again, you don't want to get into the technicals. So when they ask, where do Bitcoins get value? When I get asked that question, I like to say it gets value from the same place that US dollars get value from. I like to explain that everything that we use as value, our credit cards and our checks, they only have value because people expect to be able to use that in the future to buy goods or services. And that's the exact same reason that Bitcoin has value. When you explain it to people like that, they might be surprised at first, but if they think about it, there's no disagreeing. You can flip it on them and ask if you would accept dollars for your business if you thought dollars are going to be not worth anything next year. And no, nobody would. And it doesn't matter if the government says they have value, people have to expect that they're going to be able to use them in the future. One of the trickier questions that I get is when people ask, how are Bitcoins created? Because, of course, that can get easily into the quagmire of the technicals and talking about mining like Harry did earlier. So when I get asked, how are Bitcoins created? I just like to say that it's a computer algorithm that runs. And similar to the Visa or MasterCard network, when the Bitcoin transactions are processed, the same way that Visa or MasterCard transactions are processed, people get rewarded for running that network. And so that's when Bitcoins are brought into existence, is in exchange for them providing the service of running the network. Another question I get is, who runs Bitcoin? A lot of people think it's a company, and they don't understand something that exists without a company behind it. So when I get asked who runs Bitcoin, I say that everybody who participates in Bitcoin runs Bitcoin. And that makes it really hard to stop. I talk about Napster and how that went to a BitTorrent model. Because some people, if they know what BitTorrent is, if they're technical, if not, and I don't talk about that aspect. But a lot of people really get that. They really say, yeah, it's hard to shut something down when there are millions of people around the world using it. You can't stop it. One of the questions also, talking about Mt. Gox, that's in the news a lot, are Bitcoins safe? And this one, I don't think Bitcoin is safe for everybody today. That's my one big concern. When I recommend Bitcoin to somebody like my aunt or my dad, I'm worried that they're going to get a virus on their computer, or they're going to get a phishing attack on their computer, and they're going to lose their Bitcoins. And that's going to be a horrible experience for them. So I don't want that to happen. So when people ask me, are Bitcoins safe? I usually say, it's not so safe today. It's early. And if you get in now, you're taking a risk that you might lose your Bitcoins. And in exchange for that risk, you have a higher chance of a reward. But in the near future, probably this year, absolutely by next year, one of Bitcoin's biggest weaknesses, the safety factor, is going to become one of Bitcoin's biggest strengths. Today, you can't ensure that your bank account's financial statements are accurate. But with Bitcoin, that can absolutely happen in the future. You can have exchanges where you know they have the funds on reserve. If you're investing with somebody like a Bernie Madoff, you can know that he has the funds that he says he has. And that doesn't exist today. That's something that's going to be brand new. Additionally, with the hardware wallets that people are working on, today there's no bank that I have that says you can log in on a virus-infested computer and safely access your bank account. And today, you can do that with Bitcoin. You can log on to a virus-infested computer and using a hardware wallet, not have any concerns about using that virus-infested computer to do your transactions. And that's really different. So, are Bitcoins safe? Not so much today, but very soon they will be. The other one, who created Bitcoin? People always like to know, and we don't know the answer. So I'd say we don't know, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the NSA created it or whoever. And for whatever reason they chose to remain anonymous, and maybe because other creators of digital currencies have been locked in jail, it doesn't matter. It's here, and people are using it, and it doesn't matter who created it. So that's how I introduce Bitcoin to my friends. I talk about what's in it for them. And I think from their perspective, why would they get excited about Bitcoin? And then I really make it easy for them to buy by just saying, go to Coinbase in the US. And when they ask their questions, I answer it from a non-technical perspective. And with that, I'd like to open it up to you and ask you, are there any questions that you get that are hard for you to answer, that you'd like my perspective on, or any other discussion items that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think what you're doing is, I think this is a very important presentation in the sort of the adoption curve of Bitcoin. Most of the early adopters either spent a lot of time researching it or have some sort of technical background or participate in the technology industry to some degree. And for mainstream adoption, it's about creating interest and awareness and learning how to present Bitcoin in a way that's not intimidating. And I think it still is fairly intimidating as part of the reason that we've seen some of the success in Doge, because it just came off as nice and friendly. So who's got questions?
Yeah, Doge is fun, huh?
Doge is fun.
You go to r/Dogecoin and everybody's, they've got their memes and I forget the dog. But yeah, Doge is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's the idea of, you know, got milk and figuring out how to present Bitcoin in a friendly fashion. So in short, if you've got only one sentence to communicate Bitcoin to someone, you know, what is it that you say?
It's digital gold. And just like gold, there's a rush on right now to get it.
That's a good one. Any other questions? And I like the, on the who created Bitcoin, we should all be like wearing shirts saying, I am Satoshi. Because as you said, you know, who runs Bitcoin? We all do.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you.